Morbid Facts, Part 21. When Ashton Kutcher was 13, he almost committed suicide by jumping off a hospital roof. His twin brother with cerebral palsy had only hours to live if he didn't get a heart transplant, so Ashton wanted to give him his. He was saved when his father and a nurse informed him that his brother had just received a donor. This is the gravestone of Elijah Bond, the man who patented the Ouija board. In 1871, a man survived the fire and sinking of a ship, but it gave him PTSD. 41 years later, he was finally able to overcome his fear and sail again, only to die in the sinking of that new ship, called the Titanic. Morbid Facts, Part 22. A South African man named Martin Pistorius lived through an actual nightmare. When he was 12 years old, Martin got sick and fell into a coma where he remained in a vegetative state for 12 years. Or at least, doctors thought it was a vegetative state. Because 2 years into the coma, Martin regained consciousness, but was unable to show any sign of it. So he was trapped in a lifeless state for an entire decade while being fully aware of everything going on around him. He said one of the worst parts was when the daycare lady would sit him in front of children and baby TV shows all day long. On multiple occasions, he also heard his mother say, "I hope you die." Today, Martin can speak through a computer and move with a wheelchair, as his awareness has fully returned. Morbid Facts, Part 24. In 1978, Charlie Chaplin's body was stolen and held for ransom, but his widow refused to pay ransom demands of 400,000 euros because she said Charlie would have thought it to be ridiculous. His body was found in a cornfield 11 weeks later, and the two suspects were apprehended. A woman in Florida once spent 6 straight years sitting on a couch. She died during a surgery that attempted to remove her skin that was grafted into the fabric. Frank Hayes was a jockey who suffered a fatal heart attack and died in the middle of a horse race in 1923. His body, however, remained on the saddle throughout the race, as his horse Sweet Kiss crossed the finish line ahead of the rest, thus winning the race. This was the first time Hayes had ever won a race, and the last. Morbid Facts, Part 25. In 1880, the Queen of Thailand's boat capsized on the way to her palace. Despite many witnesses, nobody dared to save the drowning queen and her daughter. This was because touching the queen under any circumstances was a crime punishable by death. The lowest form of accommodation in Victorian England was a place where you could dangle on a rope overnight for the price of a penny. For centuries, the feet of Chinese women were tightly bound from a young age as part of a traditional custom, causing the breaking and bending of the bones of the toe. This resulted in extremely disfigured feet that resembled the hooves of animals. Morbid Facts, Part 26. In 2001, an 8-year-old boy named Jesse Arbogast was attacked by a 7-foot bull shark while he was standing in knee-deep water near Pensacola, Florida. The shark had bitten off one of Jesse's arms and part of his thigh before his uncle pulled it away and wrestled it to shore. After a park ranger shot the shark in the head, Jesse's uncle retrieved the severed arm, put it on ice, and drove it to the hospital where it was successfully reattached. Morticians often use these spiky contacts to keep the eyes of the dead closed during funeral viewings. Morbid Facts, Part 27. In 1999, skydiver Joan Murray's parachute malfunctioned, causing her to fall 14,500 feet to the ground. Miraculously, Joan survived the fall, thanks to the fact that she landed directly onto a mound of fire ants. Doctors believe that being stung over 200 times by the ants released a surge of adrenaline that kept her heart beating. Refrigerator doors are only magnetic because kids used to die inside of them. Before the Refrigerator Safety Act of 1956, the doors could only be opened by pulling the handle from the outside, which resulted in the deaths of many children who found abandoned refrigerators and got trapped inside of them while playing hide and seek. Morbid Facts, Part 28. Angelina Jolie was once so depressed that she tried to hire a hitman to kill her. She felt that a murder would be easier on her family than if she committed suicide. The would-be hitman talked her out of it by asking her to wait a month and reconsider her decision. Anesthesia awareness happens when a patient under anesthesia is completely conscious but is unable to physically move their body. Patients are fully aware throughout their operation and are able to feel pain without the ability to alert doctors to stop the procedure. Morbid Facts, Part 29. A 42-year-old Russian fisherman was viciously attacked by a bear in 2014, but he was saved when the ringtone his granddaughter installed on his iPhone suddenly went off. Justin Bieber's song Baby miraculously sent the bear running back into the woods. In Houston, Texas, a 19-year-old boy named Rashad died while attempting to play Russian roulette in front of friends. He apparently didn't know how the game works since he tried to use a semi-automatic pistol instead of a revolver. There are over 70 documented cases of transplant patients experiencing the same thoughts and feelings as their owners did in life. People have reported everything from craving their donor's favorite foods to inheriting their talents. It has posed a theory that the cells in our bodies can store memories. Morbid Facts, Part 30. In 2002, a 15-year-old boy became inspired by the terrorist attacks on 9/11. He decided to steal an airplane and fly it into a building in Tampa, Florida. It ended up damaging only one office room, and he was the only person that died. This is a female mental patient from 1904 with her diagnosis of premature dementia carved into her back. Alan Turing was the man who broke the Enigma code during World War II. He is estimated to have shortened the war by 2 years and to have saved more than 14 million lives. He was later charged for being a homosexual and was forced to undergo chemical castration. Morbid Facts, Part 31. In 1963, Rodney Fox was spearfishing off the coast of Australia when something suddenly pulled him under. Within seconds, Fox was suffering from a punctured lung, ripped diaphragm, pierced scapula, and an exposed rib cage, abdomen, and spleen. After pulling him up from the water, rescuers had to keep his wetsuit on to prevent his organs from spilling out. After 4 hours of surgery and 462 stitches, Rodney Fox lived to tell the tale of surviving one of the worst great white shark attacks in recorded history. Morbid Facts, Part 32. Judith Barcy, the girl who voiced Ducky in The Land Before Time, was shot and killed by her own father in a murder-suicide in 1988. She was only 10 years old. This is what the end of a species looks like. A keeper in Sudan says goodbye to the last male white rhino in the world, 2018. This is the last photo ever taken of American freediver Nicholas Mavoli. He was attempting to freedive 236 feet deep. He completed the dive, surfaced, gave the okay sign, tried to speak, and then he passed out. He never regained consciousness and died later that day to pulmonary edema. Morbid Facts, Part 33. When Robin Williams met Coco the gorilla for the first time in 2001, he made her smile for the first time in 6 months. When Robin died in 2014, Coco overheard the news and said the word cry in sign language. A girl who grew up in a concentration camp drew this when she was asked to draw a picture of home in 1948. The deacon St. Lawrence was roasted alive on a giant grill during the persecution of Valerian in 258 AD. As he was being executed, he joked with his tormentors, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." Today, he is the patron saint of chefs, firefighters, and comedians. Morbid Facts, Part 34. Famous Austrian composer and painter Arnold Schoenberg had triskaidekaphobia, aka a fear of the number 13. He feared the number so much that he called it 12A instead of 13. For years he was terrified that he would die on Friday the 13th when he was 76, since 7 plus 6 equals 13. In fact, he was so scared of that day that he stayed in bed all night until he essentially scared himself to death. He died of a heart attack just minutes before midnight. As per his request, the creator of Pringles had his ashes stored in a Pringles can when he died. 18 months after colon surgery, an Australian woman returned to the hospital when she was experiencing severe stomach pain. Apparently, the surgeons had accidentally left their scissors inside of her abdomen. Morbid Facts, Part 35. In a 1974 interview, NBA legend Pistol Pete Maravich said, quote, "I don't want to play 10 years in the NBA and then die of a heart attack at age 40. He played in the NBA for 10 years from 1970 to 1980 and then died of a heart attack in 1988 at age 40. This is a photo of a little African girl in a zoo in Belgium in 1958. The Oxford English Dictionary was mostly written by William Chester Minor, a schizophrenic murderer who cut off his own penis and spent most of his life in a mental institution. Morbid Facts, Part 36. King Tut was a product of incest as his parents were brother and sister. He had a club foot, a severe overbite, womanly hips, and enlarged breasts. Most experts agree that he probably died as a result of these deformities. The human head can remain conscious and aware for up to 20 seconds after being decapitated. A student was once taking an exam and couldn't handle the stress and anxiety anymore, so he put 2 pencils up his nostrils and headbutted the desk, forcing the pencils through his brain. He died instantly and all the other students got automatic A's. Morbid Facts, Part 37. The first firefighter to die on 9/11 was a 37-year-old man named Daniel Sir. He was killed when a woman jumped from one of the towers and landed on top of him. Founder of CNN, Ted Turner, has a video scheduled to be broadcasted if the end of the world is ever upon us. There's a horrific belief in South Africa that sex with a virgin will cure you of HIV. Adult men have been known to rape children as young as 9 years old in hopes of a cure. It's called the virgin cleansing myth. Morbid Facts, Part 38. The Station nightclub fire in Rhode Island was a terrible tragedy that killed 100 people in 2003. But a man named Mike Vargas managed to survive for more than 90 minutes inside the building. He was trampled by a mob trying to escape and only survived because he was insulated by all the bodies burning around him. He walked out with only minor burns on his legs but still suffers from severe PTSD to this day. In 2015, a Texas father saved his son's life when doctors wrongly declared him brain dead and wanted to take him off life support. He barricaded himself inside the hospital room with a gun and had a 3-hour standoff with a SWAT team until his son squeezed his hand. The son eventually made a full recovery. Morbid Facts, Part 39. A 19-year-old girl named Olga was camping with her stepfather in Russia when a mother brown bear attacked them. After the bear broke her stepfather's neck and smashed his skull, Olga attempted to flee. But the bear chased her down and soon grabbed her by the legs and started mauling her. Olga then managed to make 3 phone calls to her mother while being eaten alive by the bear and her 3 cubs. In the first phone call, she screamed, "Mom, the bear is eating me. Mom, it's such agony. Mom, help." At first, her mother thought it was a joke, but soon heard the true horror in her daughter's voice and the sound of bears growling and chewing. But she could only helplessly listen in horror to her daughter's screams for mercy. Nearly an hour later, the bears had left her, but Olga knew she was gonna die. She said, "Mom, I don't feel the pain anymore. Forgive me for everything. I love you so much." Morbid Facts, Part 40. In 1944, 14-year-old George Stinney Jr. was the youngest person ever to be executed in the United States. He was given the electric chair after being accused of murdering 2 young girls in South Carolina. He was exonerated 70 years after his execution in 2014 when a court ruled that he had not received a fair trial. David Reimer was a Canadian man who was raised as a girl after a botched circumcision led to a sex reassignment surgery before he was 2. Upon realizing he was not a girl, Reimer started living as a male at age 15. But after Morbid Facts, Part 41. After her daughter died of yellow fever in 1872, a heartbroken mother wanted to make sure that her daughter was never alone in times of need. Since the daughter was terrified of storms, the grave was constructed with an entrance leading to a staircase that descends to her coffin. During thunderstorms, the mother would go to the graveyard and enter the tomb to comfort her child. Convicted rapists in Saudi Arabia are often executed by public beheadings. Disney's first water park, called River Country, closed in 2001 after an 11-year-old boy died from a brain-eating parasite he got in the lake. The park still lies completely abandoned to this day. Morbid Facts, Part 42. When 13-year-old Ryan White got AIDS from a blood donor in 1984, he was only given 6 months to live. Even though doctors said he posed no risk to other students, he was banned from returning to school by a petition signed by 117 parents. An auction was even held to raise funds to keep him out, and a local newspaper that supported him received death threats. The family was forced to leave town when a bullet was shot through the window of their home. Ryan outlived the doctor's diagnosis by 5 years, dying at the age of 19. Frank Goldsmith was a Titanic survivor who later lived near Tiger Stadium in Detroit. But he said he never took his children to a ball game because the roar of the crowd reminded him of the screams of people dying in the freezing waters. Morbid Facts, Part 43. Seth MacFarlane and Mark Wahlberg were both booked to fly on American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane that crashed into the World Trade Center on 9/11. Wahlberg decided last minute to fly to Toronto instead, while MacFarlane missed the flight by 10 minutes due to a hangover. Both have said they've had countless dreams of the scenario in which they got on that plane. During the Holocaust, famous Jewish boxer Shlomo Aruch was forced to fight fellow prisoners at Auschwitz. It was merely for the entertainment of Nazi officers, and the losers would be sent to the gas chambers. Aruch survived over 200 fights over a 2-year span and was freed when the camp was liberated. Morbid Facts, Part 44. In 1860, a 20-year-old woman named Rhoda Derry was sent to a mental hospital after growing up with no signs of mental health problems. But she had been acting strange lately and was believed to have been possessed by a demon. For the next few decades, she literally lived in a small basket, and her muscles became so weak that it became impossible for her to move her legs or hips. She eventually scratched at her eyes until she went blind, beat her face until her front teeth were knocked out, and lost the ability to speak. In 1904, she was finally transferred to a different asylum where she would die 2 years later. Morbid Facts, Part 45. After 9/11, the rescue dogs searching in the rubble started to become depressed because they weren't finding any live bodies. Rescue workers started to bury themselves in the debris to trick the dogs into thinking they were saving people. It is estimated that just over 100 billion people have died on the planet to date. In 1971, high school student Juliana Kopka was sucked out of an airplane after it was struck by lightning. She fell nearly 10,000 feet still strapped to her chair and lived, only to endure an 11-day walk through the Amazon rainforest to the nearest civilization. She was eventually rescued by some local lumbermen and ended up being the sole survivor of the plane crash. Morbid Facts, Part 46. In 1994, Mauro Prosperi was competing in a 145-mile endurance event through the Sahara Desert. During the race, a sandstorm disoriented Prosperi, causing him to run nearly 200 miles in the wrong direction. He soon found himself completely stranded in the middle of the desert without any resources. After a few days of suffering, he decided to slit his own wrists, attempting to die a less painful death. But he was so dehydrated that his thick blood clotted up the wounds, and he woke up the next day. 9 days later, he was rescued in a completely different country after losing 40 pounds of body weight. He survived off of insects, cactuses, his own urine, bats, snakes, and wet wipes. The traditional last meal for inmates on death row did not begin as a final compassionate act for them. It was otherwise an attempt to bribe their ghosts to not haunt the executioners. Nicknamed the Russian bird boy, Vanya Yudin was kept isolated by his mother in a room full of birds in cages. When he was rescued in 2008 at the age of 7, he could only communicate by chirping and flapping his arms. Morbid Facts, Part 48. Tom and Eileen Longergan were a young couple from Louisiana on a vacation in the Coral Sea off the coast of Australia. They were scuba diving with a large group in the open ocean and were accidentally left behind. By the time someone realized they were missing, it was too late, and the couple was never found. This is a series of cat paintings by famous artist Louis Wayne from the early 1900s. They capture a slow descent into the varying levels of his schizophrenic episodes. After watching a documentary about women being tortured and killed in a basement, Katrina McGaw realized she was actually living in the same apartment. Morbid Facts, Part 49. This is the tomb of little Merritt Beardsley, an 8-year-old boy who died of an uncurable illness in 1865. A few days before he died, he told his dad that he was afraid of death because he didn't want to be buried in the dark. So his parents honored his wish and put a window in his tomb. In 2006, a woman who had been missing for 3 years was found dead in her London flat, with the TV still running. In 2002, a Croatian diver got lost in an underwater cave and stabbed himself in the chest to avoid the agony of drowning. It was the first and only known case of someone committing suicide while diving. Morbid Facts, Part 50. Sonny Graham was dying of heart failure when he got the call about a new heart. The donor was 33-year-old Terry Cottle, who had just committed suicide by shooting himself in the throat with a shotgun. After a successful transplant, Sonny started writing to Terry's widow Cheryl. The two ended up falling in love and getting married. Soon, people started to notice that Sonny was taking on some of Terry's personality and characteristics. He started liking things that he never enjoyed before, like beer and hot dogs, which were some of Terry's favorites. 12 years later, Sonny committed suicide the exact same way as Terry, with a shotgun to the throat. Morbid Facts, Part 51. In 2013, a Nigerian chef survived in a sunken ship for nearly 3 days. It was 270 feet deep in pitch black water, and he said the only thing he could hear was the sound of fish eating the corpses of his shipmates. It is estimated that up to 2 million German women were raped by Soviet soldiers following World War II. Morbid Facts, Part 53. Frankie Muniz has had 9 concussions throughout his life and now suffers from severe memory loss. His condition is so bad that he doesn't even remember being on the TV show Malcolm in the Middle. According to ancient beliefs, birthmarks show how you were killed in your past life. A man named Michael Paul was on his way home from church when he decided to casually crack his neck like any other time. But afterwards, he suddenly started sweating profusely and then went pale. By the time Paul could receive medical care, he had already slipped into a coma. Soon afterwards, Michael Paul had died from cracking his neck. Morbid Facts, Part 55. In 1998, 2-year-old Harrison Johnson was stung 432 times after disturbing a yellow jacket's nest in Tampa, Florida. Harrison's parents asked for neighborhood children and local church members to pray for him, but they didn't call for medical help until he stopped breathing more than 7 hours later. The parents belong to a religion that looks down on hospitals because they believe that doctors practice witchcraft. Doctors say the little boy could have been saved, but likely died an exquisitely painful death as a result of his parents' negligence. Morbid Facts, Part 56. Michael Jackson avoided tragedy on 9/11 thanks to his mother. He had a meeting at the top of one of the towers that morning, but missed his appointment because he overslept. The night before, he had been up late talking to his mom on the phone until 3 a.m. In France, you can legally marry a dead person as long as you can prove that they planned on marrying you before they died. On June 11, 2019, Illinois teenager Riley Horner was accidentally kicked in the head. As a result of the injury, her memory resets every 2 hours and she wakes up every day thinking it's June 11th. Morbid Facts, Part 57. There's a pair of conjoined twins whose brains are so intertwined that they share each other's senses. One can see what the other sees, taste what the other tastes, and feel what the other feels. If you hit someone with your car in China, you have to pay for their medical care. But killing someone with your car in China is just a one-time fine. For this reason, people have gone back to kill the person that they accidentally hit. The Roman Emperor Nero accidentally killed his pregnant wife by kicking her to death. He then found a young boy who looked exactly like her, castrated him, and married him. Morbid Facts, Part 58. Terry Kath, the original lead singer of the band Chicago, died after accidentally shooting himself in the head. He picked up a 9mm pistol and said, "Don't worry about it. Look, the clip's not even in it." He held the gun to his head, and before pulling the trigger, his final words were, "What do you think I'm gonna do, blow my brains out?" There was a bullet in the chamber, and he died instantly. When Pablo Escobar's daughter wanted a unicorn, he bought her a horse and stapled a cone to its head and wings to its back. The horse died a week later due to severe infections. In 1984, a woman started hearing a voice in her head. The voice told her she had a brain tumor, where the tumor was, and how to treat it. Despite no other symptoms, the doctors ordered tests and found the tumor right where the voice said it would be. Morbid Facts, Part 59. The suit worn by the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz was made out of real lion skin and fur. Several lions were killed in order to make the costume look as realistic as possible. In 2012, a woman from New York donated her kidney to save the life of her boss. The boss then fired her when she took too long to recover from the operation. A British Royal Marine had a leg tattoo of Liverpool's motto, "You'll never walk alone." But after a major injury in Afghanistan, his leg was amputated. The surgeon had to cut the tattoo so it now read, "You'll never walk." Morbid Facts, Part 60. A man was looking for his childhood home on Google Maps when he found both of his dead parents still sitting outside. As the Titanic sank, one female passenger chose to stay on board because she refused to leave her dog. She was found dead in the water, holding her dog in her arms. If sugar gliders are deprived of social interaction, they can become so sad that they can die from loneliness. In 2007, a man from Florida woke up in the middle of the night with a severe headache. When he drove to the hospital, they found a bullet in his head. It turned out that his wife had shot him in the head while he was sleeping. Morbid Facts, Part 61. JFK's little sister Rosemary was born mentally ill, and the Kennedy family didn't want to be embarrassed by her. So they paid a surgeon to perform a lobotomy on her when she turned 23. During a lobotomy, the surgeon would shove a metal rod into the skull through the eye socket and scramble the frontal lobe. Rosemary was awake the whole time, and doctors asked her questions while they were cutting away at her brain. When she suddenly stopped verbally responding, they ended the surgery. Following the operation, Rosemary Kennedy was never able to walk or talk again. She was institutionalized for the rest of her life until she died at the age of 86. Morbid Facts, Part 62. In 2008, a 23-year-old Vietnamese woman suffered from a mysterious food allergy that aged her about 50 years in just a few days. Recognize any of the objects in this photo? This picture is designed to give the viewer the simulated experience of having a stroke. Everything looks hauntingly familiar, but you can't quite fully recognize a single object. In 1939, 5-year-old Lena Medina became the youngest confirmed person to ever give birth. Her son was born by C-section and was raised as her brother. Medina is still alive today, but has never revealed the identity of the father nor the circumstances of her impregnation. Morbid Facts, Part 63. Russian scientist Vladimir Demikhov is widely considered to be a pioneer in the world of organ transplants. He is also more notoriously known for his attempts to create a two-headed dog during the Cold War era. He created about 20 of these dogs, which had the ability to move around, drink water, and even bark. Most died within days, but one specimen was able to live for more than a month. Experts have considered his work horrifying but incredible. These were the clothing and acts of Rome's most famous executioner, Mastro Tita. He carried out a total of 516 executions over a 68-year span. In 2015, 17-year-old Rebecca Townsend completed her bucket list right before she was hit by a car. Her final goal was to save a life. Before the car hit her, she pushed her friend out of the way and sacrificed herself. Morbid Facts, Part 64. Actor and comedian Chris Farley was originally casted to be the voice of Shrek, but he died of a drug overdose in 1997 when 90% of his lines were recorded for the movie. In 19th century Great Britain, it was illegal to attempt suicide. If the person was caught, the crime was punishable by hanging. You are 14% more likely to die on your birthday than any other day of the year. Despite its popularity, Botox is the deadliest known substance on the planet. Just 1 gram of Botox is toxic enough to kill more than 5 million grown adults. Morbid Facts, Part 65. This is why you should never put your feet on a car's dashboard. 22-year-old Grain Healy had her legs propped up when the airbag went off and forced both of her feet into her skull, breaking almost every bone in her face. As a result of her injuries, part of her skull was removed and she lived without a forehead for 2 years. Celestis Incorporated is a company that will send your cremated remains into space. For a price ranging from $1,000 to $15,000, you have the option of being launched into deep space, to the moon, or into Earth's orbit. In the 9th century, the corpse of a pope was put on trial and found guilty. His 7-month-old skeleton had 3 fingers removed and was thrown into a river with weights tied to it. Morbid Facts, Part 66. In 2008, Charles Peck was killed instantly in a commuter train crash in California. But somehow 35 phone calls were made to his friends and family from Charles's phone in the 12 hours before his body was recovered. When answered, all people could hear was static on the line. Everyone thought he was just lost in the wreckage until his mutilated body was found. In 1955, a pregnant woman was scheduled for a C-section in Morocco, but she fled the hospital after watching another woman die during the procedure. She was in pain for a few days afterwards, but when the pain suddenly disappeared, she simply went on with her life. 46 years later, she was diagnosed with a tumor. It turned out to be the calcified baby still inside of her. Morbid Facts, Part 66. In 2008, Charles Peck was killed instantly in a commuter train crash in California. But somehow 35 phone calls were made to his friends and family from Charles's phone in the 12 hours before his body was recovered. When answered, all people could hear was static on the line. Everyone thought he was just lost in the wreckage until his mutilated body was found. In 1955, a pregnant woman was scheduled for a C-section in Morocco, but she fled the hospital after watching another woman die during the procedure. She was in pain for a few days afterwards, but when the pain suddenly disappeared, she simply went on with her life. 46 years later, she was diagnosed with a tumor. It turned out to be the calcified baby still inside of her. Morbid Facts, Part 69. A boy born with just 2% of his brain completely defied doctors' predictions after his brain grew back to 80% of the average size. Doctors had told the parents to terminate the pregnancy not once, but 5 times. The 8-year-old from England is the only known child to ever survive this condition. In order to keep Genghis Khan's burial a secret, all 2,000 plus people who attended his funeral were executed. The executioners were then killed by members of his escort, who eventually committed suicide when they reached their destination. 800 years later, the site still remains undiscovered to this day. Morbid Facts, Part 70. In 1972, Neil Armstrong visited the town of Langholm, Scotland. When he got there, he was read a 400-year-old law declaring that any Armstrong found in the town should be hanged. This is a high-resolution image of stitches in the eye after a corneal transplant. Thanks to the National Association for the Preservation of Skin Art, you can leave your tattoos behind after you die. After the funeral home has removed your tattooed skin, the organization will preserve it in a frame and send it to your loved ones. This is a photo of Benjamin, the last known Tasmanian tiger, at the Hobart Zoo in 1936. The species officially went extinct when Benjamin was locked outside of his sleeping quarters on a cold Tasmanian night and froze to death.